Assalamu alaikum friends. Thank you guys so much for stopping by. Inshallah you're all doing well. Today I wanted to talk about something that came to mind when I read an article in the New York Times about the requirement in some European countries during this pandemic to wear surgical masks, and the fact that in these same countries there are also prohibitions on women wearing niqab. In France, there is a nationwide ban of niqab, and if a woman is stopped wearing one, she can be fined. In that article, he asked whether these European governments, such as France in particular, would reconsider these bans on niqab now that they were requiring people to wear surgical masks in certain places. When I read it, I remembered a lot of research that I had done on this topic about 2 years ago, because I wrote an article for a journal at my school on the French law that banned facial coverings. Unfortunately, my article wasn't published, but I still learned a lot from it, and it's super relevant right now, so I thought that I would just break down the French law and the response that has occurred since that law was passed in 2010. So unfortunately, I can't read French, but I do have the English text of the law, and I'll read it to you guys. The law, if you're interested, is Act number 2010/1192, and Article 1 states, "No one shall in any public space wear clothing designed to conceal the face." Article 2 then goes on to provide some exceptions to the rule and states that it will not apply if the clothing is prescribed or authorized by legislative or regulatory provisions, is authorized to protect the anonymity of the person concerned, is justified for health or safety reasons or professional grounds, or as part of sporting, artistic, or traditional festivals or events. Now, with all of those exceptions, what's left, right? It's just the niqab. The case was brought before the European Court of Human Rights. Now, in order for me to explain what happened in the court, I'm going to have to give you guys a little bit of background. So the European Court of Human Rights was created as part of a treaty, the Convention for the Protection of Human Rights and Fundamental Freedoms. That was a United Nations convention, which was adopted in 1953 by European countries, and more than 50 countries have signed on to that treaty. The important article that we're focusing on in that convention is Article 9, which states that everyone has the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. This right includes freedom to change his religion or belief, and freedom, either alone or in community with others and in public or private, to manifest his religion or belief in worship, teaching, practice, and observance. Under the convention, there are only a certain amount of circumstances where limitations can be placed on this fundamental freedom. Limitations must be those that are prescribed by law, necessary in a democratic society for either protection of public order, health, or morals, or for the protection of the rights and freedoms of others. So of course, women who chose to wear the face veil or the niqab decided to challenge this law in the European Court of Human Rights. In order for the French government to win this case, they had to present an argument where their limitation on the religious freedom of these women was justified in accordance with the treaty. The first argument that the government made was that this ban was necessary for public safety reasons. The court disagreed, saying that it wasn't necessary to create a countrywide ban when women were perfectly happy to comply when security reasons required showing their faces, in terms of like going through security checks at airports or something like that, or showing their faces on photo identification documents. The next argument that the French government made was that the ban was necessary in order to promote equality between men and women. The court also rejected this because they said it was inconsistent with the fact that a lot of women wanted to wear the veil. In fact, there was a woman right before the court who was challenging the law. So how can you say that you're promoting equality when you're taking away someone's choice to wear something that they want to? The final argument that the government made in defense of the law was that it was necessary in order to promote living together in a democratic society. This, unfortunately, the court found was acceptable. They said that it was up to the country itself to determine what is necessary for promoting a democratic society where everyone can live together in peace, and that if the government found that it was necessary to ban covering one's face, then that was just fine, and they should be able to make that decision. So the paper that I wrote, which I mentioned before, basically said that that reasoning was ridiculous. How can you create a fundamental right to freedom and manifestation of that freedom, and then say that it is up to the government itself to decide when those limitations would be necessary for that society? I talked about how it was particularly problematic because if you read a little bit about French history and the revolution, the idea of separating church and state is very, very important and very, very strict. There is a very high level of aversion to any kind of display of religious affiliation in public. In fact, in public schools in France, you can't wear a hijab, but you also can't wear a cross, or Jewish boys can't wear kippahs. So it's any kind of religious symbol that is completely frowned upon in that society. So with that context in mind, for the court to say that it's up to that country to decide what is necessary to promote democratic values and to allow for living together in a shared space is just something that I think really needs to be reevaluated in light of what the convention seeks to protect for all people, and that is the freedom to have one's religion and to practice it, and not only that, but to display it in public. Something also that should be realized is at most 2,000 women in France wear the niqab. It's such a small population of women that the law is clearly discriminatory and clearly something that is not necessary. Something that the New York Times article spoke about that I thought was really interesting was the fact that because there aren't actually enough face masks for everyone who needs one to get one, a lot of people are being made to just use fabric masks or bandanas to cover their faces. So now it's almost indistinguishable if someone is wearing a niqab or if someone is wearing just a homemade face mask. Of course, you'll be able to tell if someone is dressed Islamically, if a woman is covered completely and also wearing a hijab. But at the same time, the amount of facial coverage is basically the same, especially if someone is wearing a baseball cap with a bandana around their face. So the article pointed out the fact that it's plainly discriminatory for a police officer to stop a woman wearing niqab when she's doing essentially the same thing that other people are required to do. And it's something that's completely contradictory. Right now, you can get a fine for wearing a niqab, but you can also get a fine for not wearing a face mask. So what's the solution? The solution is to allow women to wear what they want. Right now, because of this situation with these public safety concerns and the need to wear face masks, it's obvious that the law was discriminatory, and it's obvious that it wasn't necessary in a democratic society. We all have trouble communicating with people when we can't see their faces, we can't see their mouths, and like if they're smiling. I find myself a lot of times going out with a face mask. When I see strangers, it's kind of just like my instinct to give a smile and say hello, but the fact that they can't see me is something that I constantly forget. But it's something that we're all getting used to, and something that we can get used to. It's not that hard. When I was growing up, I never saw women wearing niqab because I wasn't around Muslim women. After I became Muslim, it was something strange for me, and it was something that I had to get used to. But now it's perfectly fine to speak to women who are wearing it. I don't feel any kind of barrier in terms of communication. You can still hear the person's voice, you can still see their eyes, you can still see if they're smiling actually. It just takes a little bit of time to pick up on those cues. I think it goes without saying that at this point the Court of Human Rights has to reevaluate its finding that this ban is acceptable. It's clearly based on discrimination, and it's clearly unfair, and it's clearly a violation of the convention. Another article that I read in preparation for this video is called "We Are All Niqabis Now," and it was written by a woman named Katherine Bullock. It was posted on the website The Conversation. I'm going to link it down below along with the New York Times article. But she made a really good point, and she said that both of these types of garments, meaning the niqab and the face mask, are worn for a specific purpose in a specific place and for a specific time only. They're not worn 24/7, and once the purpose is over, the mask and the niqab come off. So I really liked that point because I felt like it really highlighted the hypocrisy in upholding the ban, but also forcing people to wear face masks. Yeah, we're only going to be wearing the masks for a couple of months, inshallah, until things get under control. But at the same time, we're all functioning perfectly fine. We're all going to the store, we're all ordering our food, we're all, talking to neighbors in the streets. Nothing is being disrupted in terms of ordinary life, and certainly people aren't having a hard time living together. And in fact, I think people are coming closer together these days because we need the community support for each other when we're going through these difficult and uncertain times. I have a lot of respect for women who continue to wear the niqab despite these bans, and who continue paying fines because they just won't tolerate their freedoms being limited. And it's not for any government to say when a woman's choice should be dictated because they find that they don't understand it and they don't like it. That's the bottom line. The government just doesn't like it, and that's not a reason to create a law, and it's certainly not a reason to justify a limitation on somebody's religious freedom. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, let me know so that I'll keep making content like this. If you give me a thumbs up and if you subscribe, that would be great and it would really help me out. I have followers from all over the world, alhamdulillah, and it makes me feel so special and so excited to continue making these kinds of videos for you guys. So I hope you take care, and I'll see you soon, inshallah. Bye. The final goal that was used to justify the ban. This is something that's a very small number of the population. Fireworks. Why? Every night there's fireworks. What's going on? Do you guys hear an ice cream truck? No, an ice cream.